It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
PR News in Washington. I'm Corva Coleman. Staff at a hospital in North Gaza say repeated attacks by Israeli drones have wounded multiple medical workers and damaged facilities. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reports the injured include the hospital director.
The director of the besieged Kamal Adwan Hospital, Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, has been appealing to the world in video messages for weeks now. Usually, he sits in an office. But in his most recent videos, he's in a hospital bed, struggling to speak. He explains that shrapnel from a bomb dropped by an Israeli quadcopter drone tore through a main artery in his leg, leading to severe blood loss. He says he needs a specialist and calls for the international community to help the hospital. Drones have attacked the hospital several times in recent days, including the generator and other key infrastructure. The Israeli military says it's unaware of the attack on Dr. Abu Safiya, but that Hamas has been operating from the hospital. Hamas rejects that claim. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Ramallah.
President-elect Donald Trump is rounding out the rest of his cabinet choices. He has tapped Brooke Rollins to be Agriculture Secretary. She runs a think tank that backs Trump's policy agenda. He's also tapped Congresswoman Lori Chavez DeRemer as Labor Secretary. Delegates from 175 nations are meeting in South Korea to try to solve the problem of plastic pollution around the world. Luis Valdecivio of the UN's Committee on Plastics Pollution says the problem can only be solved in a multilateral way.
Let us harness every tool of multilateralism, every ounce of creativity, and every moment of dialogue to overcome our differences and craft a treaty as ambitious our collective will allows.
The UN says that plastic breaks down into microplastics. These are found in every part of the Earth's environment and in human bodies. There's a hearing in Los Angeles today to consider a request to reduce the life without parole sentences of Eric and Lyle Menendez. The brothers were convicted of first-degree murder in the brutal 1989 slayings of their parents. Steve Futterman reports.
The request comes as attorneys say there is new evidence supporting the brothers' claim that they were sexually molested by their father, Jose Menendez. Attorney Mark Garagos is representing the brothers.
Under the current state of the law, they're eligible to have, and the court has the discretion to recall the LWOP sentence, life without parole.
The district attorney supports reducing the sentence to 50 years to life. With the more than 30 years the brothers have already served, that would make them eligible for parole. Complicating the issue is the fact that the current DA is set to be replaced next month, and the new DA says he needs to review the case before announcing his position. For NPR News, I'm Steve Futterman in Los Angeles.
It's NPR.
To WJCT.
Supporters of what's known as School
9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. The man who stabbed his ex-girlfriend 17 times outside of a Ponte Vedra Beach restaurant in June 2023 will spend the rest of his life behind bars. 19-year-old Spencer Pearson was sentenced last week after hours of testimony at the St. Johns County Courthouse in St. Augustine. Judge R. Lee Smith delivered the sentence.
There are just certain crimes that are committed that merit the maximum possible sentence. And this court finds that this is one of them.
Pearson pleaded guilty to stabbing his ex-girlfriend, the girl's mother, and a bystander. The attack left then 17-year-old Madison Schmitz partially paralyzed. In addition to the criminal case, Schmitz has filed a lawsuit against Pearson, his parents, and the restaurant where the incident occurred. If you're still looking for a place to get the perfect holiday gift, well, your local museum might be the place. On December 1st, the Sunday after Thanksgiving, is Museum Store Sunday, where you can find unique gifts and discounts. Purchasing locally made gifts at museum stores gives artists, small businesses, and museums more money to reinvest in their communities. More than 2,000 museums across the country will have special events, discounts, and gifts. 4 Jacksonville museums will be participating: the Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens, MoCA Jacksonville, the Museum of Science and History, and the Beaches Museum. Sunny skies and highs in the mid-70s today in Jacksonville.
PR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people. and the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, helping NPR advance journalistic excellence in the digital age.
Today, before you complain about the cost of groceries, consider this. More than $550 million worth of food is thrown away every day in the United States. That waste causes both environmental and economic damage. Today, we're talking to two local composting experts about a surprisingly easy way to disrupt that cycle. Later in the program, studying the invisible. We talk to two local professors about a big research grant to study dark matter. But first, before you toss those Thanksgiving leftovers, consider composting. To discuss why that might be easier than you imagine, we're joined by Tiffany Bess, founder of Apple Rabbit Compost. Good morning, Tiffany.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Also, Christina Kelcourse, co-owner of Sunshine Organics and Compost. Good morning, Christina.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So, Tiffany, what is the problem that composting aims to solve?
So composting is trying to treat our food material. I don't like to call it waste, but rather as a resource and get it back into the cycle that it needs to be in. So instead of sending it to the landfill where it releases methane gas and other greenhouse gas emissions, we want to get that back into the soil where it belongs.
And so, food waste is, as we kind of alluded to, is a really big environmental impact. I know you don't like to call it waste, but the food, the world wastes an estimated 2.5 billion tons of food every year. The EPA says about a third of the food produced worldwide never makes it to the table. And it takes up a precious resource, which is landfill space.
It does. Not only landfill space, it's also wasting a lot of energy. It's wasting a lot of energy. It's wasting the cropland used to grow that material, labor, transportation costs, a lot of fresh water as well.
You're whispering, Christina. Go ahead. You can chime in anytime.
I was just going to say, in addition, we're wasting a lot of water. About 105 billion gallons of water is used to produce the food that we're going to be eating on Thanksgiving. So when we waste half of that food, you're wasting that water as well.
Explain how the water comes into play.
Well, you're using water to grow crops and feed livestock. And then when you feed them and you water plants, and then the plants go to your Thanksgiving table and you throw them in the trash, that water has been wasted.
So this is a uniquely intense problem in the United States. So we produce more food waste than any other country, an estimated 60 million tons. That's an average of 325 pounds a person. I've seen it compared to throwing almost 1,000 apples straight into the garbage per person. And so why is the footprint so heavy in the United States?
I'm not sure the reason in the United States. I think we have a culture of what's easy and maybe overeating. And I think a lot of restaurants are guilty of putting too much on your plate. I know when I go out to eat, it's usually too much. So I think there's an overconsumption of customers and the community wanting more food than what they can actually eat.
So Thanksgiving is kind of a prime time to talk about this because that's sort of baked into the whole experience, right? Is excess and a surplus and kind of this cornucopia of foods. But, because of that, we tend to make more food than we need. People fill their plates more than they're going to eat. I saw a number that there are the equivalent of 8 million whole birds thrown away. And that 42% of the food that's thrown away on an individual's plate is turkey. So there seems to be a lot of turkey waste. What is that an opportunity to kind of think about food waste and get people on that wavelength, Tiffany?
Yeah, so my partner is actually a chef, so we think about food in the whole spectrum, if you will. And so being mindful of what you're actually creating, not producing more than what people can actually eat, and getting creative with your leftovers too. Being mindful, using your freezer, utilizing this wonderful machine that everyone has in their kitchen, a refrigerator and a freezer, and just making sure that you're just a little bit more mindful about what you're putting on your plate, Don't fill it up more than what you can actually reasonably eat. So if you got to go back for seconds, that's always good. But don't just like pile it on unnecessarily.
Of course, it's a holiday that also celebrates leftovers, which is sort of a rarity. I mean, there's not a lot of other foods that people are like deliberately looking forward to eating the next day. And so there is that mindfulness of that, but still an enormous amount of food and extra pies and extra everything after that meal. Not all of that can be composted, right?
Mm, uh, I mean, anything that was once alive can be composted. It just depends on the method by which you're doing it. So, some things you, as a home composter, aren't going to be able to compost in your backyard pile. But if you have an industrial facility like Sunshine Organics available to you, then you can compost these things like meat and dairy and high fat, high sugar foods, which are usually things that you want to avoid in your backyard compost pile.
So who should consider composting? I mean, is this the kind of thing that you think every person should be considering, or is it a certain?
Everyone.
Okay.
If you eat food, you should be composting.
Okay.
And every major city should have a commercial composting company or facility to bring large scale food waste.
And so Sunshine is unique in Jacksonville in terms of being the first organic composting facility, like a large scale facility. Are you the only currently?
We are.
Okay. And so what is the difference between having a facility like that that's available to people and people who are just trying to do an at-home compost? And we'll kind of get to what that is, in a little bit.
Sure. So, like Tiffany was saying, everybody should be composting. A lot of people everybody should be composting in their backyard, but it is limited to what you can put in there. You're not going to want to put a lot of meats and dairies, manures, things like that in your home compost facility. Those home compost bins don't get hot enough. The difference with a large commercial facility is that we can take a lot more. We can take a lot more food waste, and that our compost piles get hotter. So we are able to take the materials that you can't put into a home bin, and the compost piles get hot enough to kill off things like E. coli and other pathogens like that would get into the food waste at your home compost.
If you're just joining us, we were talking about trying to solve the problem of food waste with composting. We're talking to two local experts, and you can join our conversation at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. We've got a call from Peter on the South Side. Good morning, Peter. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. Good morning. I know this is a show about composting, but I think your listeners should know that the local grocery store chains do a lot for local homeless shelters. So, for instance, I volunteer with Mission House at Jack's Beach, and for Feeding Northeast Florida, we pick up food that is going out of date, and we take it to homeless shelters. So Feeding Northeast Florida and the individual shelters and the local grocery stores do their best to make sure that the food is put to good use and not composted.
That's great. Thanks, Peter. And thanks for the work that you do. Obviously, that's a great way to keep things from winding up in the landfill, is to repurpose them.
Yeah, there's there's a food waste hierarchy, and making sure food that is still edible goes to human consumption first, and then if it's not good for human consumption, then it can go to feed animals like pigs and other livestock. And then composting is a little bit further down there. It's, a step before going to the landfill. So there's definitely other ways to divert and save that material from going to the landfill before it even becomes
At an
compost.
earlier stage. Yeah. So Florida set a statewide goal of recycling 75% of materials by 2020, Christina, and they definitely missed that mark. I think DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, estimates that yard waste has an almost 60% recycling rate in 2022, but food waste just 6%. I'm surprised that it's such a disparity between those two. Why is that?
I think that there's a lack of facilities and infrastructure that most major cities in Florida do not have a facility where you can compost food. It's a very intensive, hard process to get permitted in the state of Florida. They make it very difficult. Per code and policy in Florida, we had to be licensed as a landfill.
Hmm.
So it took a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources to get a facility like ours up and running. So I think it discourages a lot of people that maybe would want to do something like that. It's going to limit people. I do know that the Florida DEP is addressing that right now. They're looking at updating those codes. It hasn't happened yet, but they are looking at it, and they have some drafts of things that they're presenting. So we'll see if that goes through.
I imagine, I mean, if you're trying to get a quote unquote landfill permitted in any neighborhood where there's even a trace of residential, that would be a really tall order.
Right. And I think it's a lack of education as well, because when you come and visit our site, and we are open for tours, and we have had several city council members come out, Mayor Donna Deegan has come out. We've even had state senators come out to our site and visit. And when one of the comments that they say is, wow, there's really no smells. It kind of smells like the forest floor, kind of like a wood chippy smell. So it's an education thing. So yes, getting a landfill near residential, when people don't have the education of knowing what a facility really is, I think it's hard. And the problem is that we need to be near food sources. So when you put a facility too far out of the city, then you don't have what we call feedstock, which is the food waste and the yard waste. The haulers are not going to bring the food waste to us because we're too far away. So we do have to be close by to make it work.
I'm going to take a call from Don in North Jacksonville. Good morning, Don. Go ahead.
Hello.
Good morning, Don. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to share that I lived in Asia for a few years as a teacher, and over there they separate all the food from the regular trash, and they compost it. And it's practice, normal practice in China and Taiwan. And I see that here in Duval schools where I work part-time as a sub, and also in Texas, it's all over the U.S., where there's so much food wasted in schools, where kids don't eat like half the food or most of the food. All that food ends up in the trash. And it seems very, not only environmentally bad or wasteful, but also morally, considering so many people are dying of hunger around the world. And I thought that what there needs to be done so this can be, maybe this concept can be created or followed in the U.S., like approach school districts and say, hey, can we get you guys to join this effort to compost and collect all that food that is thrown away and wasted in schools and cafeterias?
Yeah, thanks, Don. I mean, certainly food waste when we're experiencing food insecurity in this country is a big deal. There have been estimates that the amount of food we throw away could feed each of the 47 million people that experience food insecurity on a daily basis, the equivalent of 5 meals. So it's no small thing, but I think he's getting into, again, that food path, I guess, that it goes through. And there are different points where it diverges in ways to save.
I think Chris really hit the nail on the head with the lack of infrastructure for composting, and that's really the biggest thing. Is now that there is a facility here in Jacksonville, what we lack is hauling capability. So to be able to actually get that material and bring it to these facilities is kind of the next piece of this puzzle, and that's kind of what we're lacking at this point.
I want to talk about that, but I want to take a call from Angela on the South Side. Good morning, Angela. Go ahead. Angela, good morning. Go ahead.
Hi there. I'm interested, and Chris received the USDA grant for composting, and I'm interested in what are her next steps and what does she need to expand her operation there.
Good question. And so you did get a healthy-sized grant from the USDA, almost $5 million for this Jacksonville operation. So tell us what that money has gone towards and the infrastructure that you have in place.
Yep. So the infrastructure that we have in place currently is that we have a full scale, large scale compost facility where we are taking food waste and yard waste currently and processing it into a healthy, rich soil.
And where is it located?
We are located on Buffalo Ave in the Talleyrand area.
Okay.
And so the grant that we received allows us to improve our equipment. We were able to add a couple of large trucks so we can deliver some compost to the agriculture community that is mostly on the outskirts, outside of Duval. There are a few small farms and agriculture in Duval that we also deliver to. And then we also received a large piece of equipment that would help us create biochar.
Okay. And biochar is basically when you're kind of burning some of this, or at least heating it very, very hot and creating a sort of a fertilizer.
Sort of. So that's a good explanation. It's kind of it looks like a charcoal, but it's not, and it is the burning of organics. So we use wood, and you can burn food waste. You can burn other things, but we use wood, and it captures. It doesn't actually allow the air to release or any of the smoke. It's all captured in. It's all in an enclosed system. We actually get carbon credits for what we're doing.
Okay.
And then you can use the biochar for a lot of different things. One of the major things that we'll use it for is for filtering water. We've been approached by the state to look at some studies to study the filtration of biochar to help with the algae blooms.
Oh, interesting.
That
To kind
Florida
of
is.
divert some of that.
Yep. So biochar, the best way to kind of think about it is it's kind of like that black stuff that you see in your Brita water filter when you first get it. That's the filter. That it's filtering out. What it does is it attracts different materials. All the bad ones get attracted to the biochar, and the biochar holds onto it. And it's used as a fertilizer because it's got a lot of carbon, and it captures a lot of the different materials that plants eat.
So, Tiffany, what are the steps in terms of collecting material, and if you're not doing a home compost, like what do you need to do to get it to a place that does that kind of recycling? Are there pickup services available? Do people just have to kind of put it in a bin and haul it over to their local compost facility?
So that's where Apple Rabbit Compost comes in. So when I started my composting business in 2016, that was before we had an industrial facility. And so I was collecting and processing food scraps on my own. I operate under the threshold that requires the permitting, um, the landfill permitting. So I operate as a community composter. It's bigger than backyard composting, but it's definitely not at the industrial size. And so we provide a couple composting services primarily to the urban core neighborhoods of Jacksonville. So the 32202 through '07 zip code. So those are your like urban core neighborhoods. And we come by every week and we collect food scraps from our subscribers. Or we also have drop off subscriptions at the Riverside Arts Market or the Murray Hill Farmers Market where our subscribers can bring their material there too.
And what are they putting their material in? Do they need a special container? How much are they usually, does a household deliver if they have a subscription for a weekly drop off?
So we provide a 5-gallon bucket with a compostable liner, and so they get to fill that up as much as they need to. Hopefully, it's not a lot. Even though they are composting, we still want them to be mindful about how much waste that they actually are producing. Because we do find that sometimes when people start a composting service, they'll actually start wasting more. Because they're like, oh, it's getting composted.
Wow,
So,
interesting.
it's okay. But I think that eating it is, it's that first part of the food waste hierarchy. So it needs to be consumed first. Composting is just kind of a last resort. But yeah, so they get a 5-gallon bucket, they fill it up. And then depending on their subscription, we either come by and pick it up off their porch or they take it to the market.
And so what labor is required from your customers? Do they have to like do that layering of the compost? Do they just throw all of their material into the bin and you take care of it?
Yeah, they just throw all of their material into the bin and then we take care of it. So we'll take food scraps and then we'll also take things like your paper towels and compostable materials, pizza boxes are not recyclable, but they are compostable. So we just ask that our subscribers cut them up into smaller pieces and they can throw those in their bucket. We've been able to tell a few times when somebody's had a pizza party because it's just like completely full of pizza boxes.
Right.
And that's always really exciting. And then we also we do a pumpkin collection every year as well. We started in 2016 when we first opened up the
Like
business.
after Halloween.
And so we collect it from our subscribers, and we encourage the general public to bring their pumpkins to some of our drop-off sites. But Chris has really taken that further because she's collecting it on a larger scale. So
Yeah, I just want to say, I think that Jacksonville is incredibly lucky. We have two resources here in Jacksonville that a lot of other major cities in Florida do not have. We have a very strong community composter, which is Tiffany, who can pick up in certain locations for people that want to do food scraps, and also at the farmers market, which is fantastic, or the Riverside Arts Market. And then you have a commercial compost facility, which again, most cities don't have. So Tiffany's collecting pumpkins, which is great. We also collected pumpkins. So after Halloween, we took in 72,000 pounds of wasted pumpkins, which
Wow.
is about the equivalent of 3 tractor-trailer trucks worth of just pumpkins that would have normally gone to the landfill. So you have to think about that as a resource for Jacksonville. When food waste goes to the landfill, it's creating emissions. And the EPA did a study in 2023, which was unprecedented. They've never studied landfill waste before that's focused specifically on emissions. This is the first time. And what they found was that landfills are actually the third largest producer of emissions.
Greenhouse gas emissions.
Greenhouse gas emissions, which is huge. That's a big deal. So our landfills are polluting our air. And what they did find also was that food waste is the number one material in the landfill creating those emissions. So you think about these 3 tractor-trailer trucks of pumpkins going to the landfill, that's like regular practice. And if your city doesn't have the resources like Apple Rabbit and Sunshine, it's all going to the landfill.
And so food waste can produce carbon, it can produce methane, both of which, are contributors to a warming planet. And compost still produces some carbon, but it really cuts the methane because it is sort of eliminating that gas production.
yeah, so composting itself is a completely different process than landfilling waste. So landfills by nature are storage facilities and they're anaerobic and they lack the oxygen, they lack the water needed to convert this carbon and nitrogen material into compost. And so that process is inherently disruptive, whereas composting is it's a completely different process. So it doesn't have those same sort of effects, and that's why you don't have like the odor issues from a properly maintained compost facility,
Uh-huh.
because it does have that water, it does have that oxygen, and so it's not an anaerobic process. And the anaerobic microorganisms are what creates all those big baddie emissions.
Interesting. I want to ask you though, I mean, in terms of you have this facility, Sunshine Organics, Christina, the city did try this pilot program last year. The city council voted to give a 6-month test, seeing if, a city, I guess they provided kind of a truck and some assistance, worked with Sunshine Organics, but ultimately came away saying it shouldn't be continued because it didn't work on that scale. So remind us, first of all, what that project entailed, and then sort of what the pilot program showed you.
So I don't think they said that it didn't work. I think what was happening is that Sunshine and the city didn't have a hauler. So during the pilot program, the city donated a truck, basically a garbage truck, to pick up the food waste. After the pilot program, the city said, the truck's going to go back to being a garbage truck. And Sunshine we don't have garbage trucks. We don't pick up. We're just a facility. So until we find, like Tiffany had mentioned earlier, until we find a hauler company that can pick up the food waste, we're kind of missing the bridge between getting the food waste to the facility. And in Jacksonville right now, there's really no interested haulers that have stepped up to start picking up food waste. And it is a big process because you have to dedicate a truck, which costs a lot of money. You have to dedicate a driver. You have to have a salesperson to build a route to find the restaurants and grocery stores that want to compost. So there's labor involved, and the city wasn't going to do that. And we're not going to do that. We're a facility, so we just want to process and make good compost and get it to the farms and agriculture and landscaping. So that was the breakdown in the pilot.
Yeah. And so you were working at the time with about 15 restaurants. And I would guess that there you get the most bang for your buck with a restaurant because they are probably producing as much food waste as anybody.
I don't know about that. I think grocery stores probably would have more waste. I think the school systems, as one of the callers had mentioned, have a lot of waste. And I have been to schools outside of Florida and seen how they have conveyor belts for the kids that can put their compostable trays on the belt and all plastic goes in the trash and the kids put the food on the conveyor belt and it goes to the back where it's collected and goes to a compost facility. But we don't have that here. I don't think restaurants have a large scale amount of waste. They're kind of like in a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 process, like tier 1 being the most waste. Restaurants are probably tier 3.
But they do produce volume, right? So if they're more frugal with their food production than, say, I am in my kitchen, but they're obviously dealing with a lot more product.
They're definitely going to produce more food waste than a household.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got an email from Brenda. She says, I love this subject. Thank you for introducing us to Sunshine Organics. Would we hear more about how we use this resource and could we have ideas about composting at home?
I'll let Tiffany do the composting at home, but I'll just say the way to use. My husband and I started Sunshine Compost, mostly him, Mike Kelcourse. And one of the reasons we started it was because we were passionate about the food waste. And we wanted to divert food from the landfill because we knew that it was polluting our air and creating greenhouse gas emissions. But along the way, we have become very passionate about the actual soil. And the quality of soil matters, especially here in Florida where our soil is so sandy. And with our development practices and construction practices, we deplete the soil, throw down plants, and they die. And it's because there's no nutrients in the soil. So we need to get people, we need to get residents, we need to get the city, municipalities using the actual compost and landscapers using compost because it'll help your plants, it'll save you money, it'll save water, it'll save fertilizer. So the actual compost itself is very important.
And in terms of home composting.
So I do want to talk a little bit more about like the compost itself and its importance, especially in pertaining to Jacksonville specifically. So Chris talked about a lot of his benefits for composting. One of the things that I also really like about the material itself is its ability to remediate Brownsfields. So the compost itself is actually able to kind of take these bad
And brownfields are places that used to be industrial facilities and are polluted to some extent. And the state tries to repurpose them, or the federal government tries to repurpose them, but they do have some level of residual pollution.
Contamination, yes. So compost, you can actually utilize that to kind of negate these harmful pollutants in the soil. And I think that that's really important in a city that is tearing down buildings a lot and leaving them kind of abandoned for a long time because it does cost a lot of money to remediate it. And I think composting is a really cost-effective way to fix that. And then also just the ability to prevent stormwater runoff, soil erosion. These are all things that are really important being a river city, being right on the water. I think composting is really important in Jacksonville for that reason alone. But as far as like composting at home, there's a lot of different methods, and Apple Rabbit Compost is actually able to kind of help figure out which method will work best for you in particular.
So you can do like consultations with people?
Exactly. So the primary methods that we kind of recommend to people that are more accessible and easy to do would be either like your traditional thermophilic bin composting, which is in your backyard. You have like a 3 foot by 3 foot bin that you're kind of layering with your green, which is your food scrap nitrogen material, and your brown carbon rich
Which is
materials.
like the cardboard you
The
mentioned. And
cardboard, leaves, all of that kind of like brown, woody wood waste. Um, and so you're going to be layering this material with your water. You need to make sure it's moist. Those microorganisms really need the oxygen and water to survive, to do their job, to work at turning that material into compost. And so by aerating it with a pitchfork, you're able to kind of feed those microorganisms and they're able to do their job. You also have bokashi composting, which is a type of pre-composting method. It's actually a little different than almost everything we've been talking about today because you are going to be using anaerobic microorganisms to ferment your material first. And so that actually just winds up speeding up the process. It allows you to compost things in your backyard that you would normally be avoiding, like meat and dairy and things like that.
you avoid those generally because they can draw pests and rodents and maybe make more of a
Rodents and
smell.
pathogens, and smells.
Yeah.
And so bokashi is able to kind of eradicate all of those issues. Your critters aren't attracted to bokashi material. It doesn't have an odor. It smells like pickles, like fermented food. And then there's also vermicomposting with worms, which is really fun. You're a little bit more limited with the type of material that you're going to use. Like you're definitely not going to add meat and dairy to it unless you've bokashied it first. But they do eat a lot and they eat it really, really quickly. And that's something that you can do in your house. You can do that in your apartment. You can do that on your balcony, in your laundry
It
room.
does require a commitment to worms, though. I
Yeah.
know well from my son's project. So, we just have a short minute here left, but I just want to ask. I mean, if there was one thing that could be done to sort of scale this up, um, Christina, in this area, what would be your wish?
Um, I think my wish right now at this stage would be for the city and for landscapers and developers to start using local compost as opposed to just doing fill dirt where you're going to plant things and they're going to die. And as Tiffany said, it also helps with erosion. So here in the city, if the city started using on medians, they started using compost, that would actually help with flooding. It would help with plants. It would help with watering. So I think that would be the number one thing to move the needle forward right now is having a commitment from the public and private sectors to start using local compost.
Well, Tiffany Bess, founder of Apple Rabbit Compost, Christina Kelcourse, co-owner of Sunshine Organics and Compost. Thank you so much for being here today. I really
Thank
appreciate the
you.
lesson.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I'd like to end it with just be grateful, not wasteful this holiday season.
All right, great advice. Coming up, the unraveling the mysteries of dark matter with not so dark money. Thank you so much. Welcome back. Well, two UNF physics professors just snagged nearly $600,000 from the National Science Foundation. It's a grant to dig into the mysteries of dark matter. Here to tell us what they're looking for are Dr. Chris Kelso. Good morning.
Good morning.
and Dr. Greg Wurtz. Both of them are physics professors at the University of North Florida. Welcome, Greg.
Good morning.
All right. So first of all, congrats on
Thank-
this grant. It's excellent. I'm sure it's going to make an enormous difference in your research. But um, before we get to that, the existence of dark matter I've seen is implied but hypothetical. How do you study something that is invisible?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at this point, the only evidence that we have for dark matter is coming from looking at the different things that we see out in the universe. So we look at both our own galaxy and then clusters of galaxies and stars that are orbiting our galaxy, and they seem to be moving faster than they should be. And so because things are moving faster than they should be, something has to be pulling them. And so physicists sometimes are inventive with names and sometimes not. So we've come up with just dark matter because we don't know what it is and it doesn't seem to be producing light.
But it is having an impact on the bodies around it, and therefore this implied existence is inferred because there's this activity happening. Something must be producing it.
Exactly. So as far as we know, for something to move this fast, something has to be causing that to happen. Something has to make these things move faster than they should be. And so, like I said, we just kind of came up with a name for it, and we call it dark matter.
And so, Greg, the existence of this, it's not just a small part of the makeup of the universe. I mean, the estimates are that it is a rather large something that's out there.
This is again a question for him because I'm a material scientist.
Okay.
I'm on the other part of the equation for that.
For the grant. Okay.
Grant, yeah.
So, Chris?
Yeah, so if you go by mass, it seems like it's about 25% if you go by energy, it's about 25% of the energy in the universe. And if you go by mass, it's about 85% of the mass in the universe seems to be this stuff that we refer to as dark matter.
So it's an extraordinarily large something to study. And you've got this big grant. So explain what it is going to be doing. It is incorporating a few different areas of science, and you're part of one part of it, Chris is part of another. So explain how those work together and what they are.
So we started collaborating maybe a few years ago on a similar project. And so he's the astrophysicist in the equation. And I'm the material scientist in the equation. And so apparently there is evidence of, in this particular project, of traces left from particles emitted by supernova, which can be found in materials. And my part of the project is to study those traces through material science.
So you're looking at materials and you're trying to see some sort of impact that may have been caused by the existence of by dark matter.
Yeah. In fact, those neutrinos leave tracks. They damage materials, and those tracks are more visible in periodic structures like crystals. And the way we actually characterize them is through a range of techniques, including optical microscopy, as those tracks may emit light in ways the crystal itself doesn't. And so we combine a number of material science techniques to study how neutrinos emitted by those supernova affect the crystallinity of materials.
The crystallinity. So you're looking at materials that have been around for a very long time, and then trying to see how they may have been damaged by this dark matter.
Yes.
You're nodding like that's a lame person.
No, that's
definition.
accurate.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, fair enough. So this is a part of a $3.5 million National Science Foundation grant. This project was recently highlighted in Physics Today, and it's this multi-school effort. So tell us a little bit about the scope of the project and how UNF fits into it.
Sure. So we're collaborating with researchers from Virginia Tech, the University of Michigan, Stanford, and then the Stanford Linear Accelerator. And then we have a few international collaborators as well. Part of the thing that's really interesting about this research is we're trying to look at rocks that have been buried for billions of years to search for these damage features. And so it requires a team of researchers from all different areas. So we need people who know about geosciences. We need astrophysicists who know about kind of the neutrinos and the dark matter. We need material scientists who know how to look at these structures. And so it's bringing together a whole bunch of different people to try to attack this problem from a different way than it has been in the past.
I would guess it's going to be a challenge to kind of unify all of these different science minds and, synthesize the work that they're doing. So who's in charge of like managing that project?
Yeah, so the primary person in charge of this is Patrick Huber, who is at Virginia Tech. And then each individual institution sort of has their own research team. And then we meet every month. And then we also have sort of annual workshops where we get together and sort of describe where we're at and making sure everybody's on the same page. And it is one thing that I really like about this is it's very collaborative as opposed to competitive, which you can sometimes run into in science.
Sometimes, right? Yeah. And so this also involves students, though. This isn't just professors doing professor stuff. This is something that I think, UNF students will ultimately be challenged with. So tell us about their involvement, how they get involved. I'm guessing that is a competitive process.
Somewhat competitive. I mean, all our undergraduate students take part of research activities in the university. It's part of their training. So it's an integral part of their training. So some of them will be paid by the grant, some others won't. They will all, many students will participate to this effort.
Okay. And so those students, have they been selected yet? Or is that process yet to come?
So we have an ad out for students, and we're looking for them currently. There are a few that have worked on things related to this, but the grant only started in September. And if everything goes well, it will be a 5-year process. And so we're still in the process of figuring out exactly who will be working on it moving forward.
And so you're going to do this research. What kinds of things might you look for in a lay person's, understanding that might tell you more about the existence of dark matter? Like, what if you see something, what will it be that would tell you that it exists or doesn't exist in the same way that you thought? Or is that not really what you're looking for? I mean, what ultimately do you hope to find?
Yeah, so this is kind of a beginning stage process. I don't think that by the end of this research, we will have been to the point where we could definitively say, yes, we are able to measure dark matter, or no. We're sort of at the beginning part where we're trying to prove that this technology is even feasible. So hopefully by the next 5 years, if you bring us in, we can say, yes, we're at a spot where now we think we might be able to build these detectors and measure dark matter if it's there.
And just briefly, Greg, what inspired you to pursue this line of research in the first place, or to collaborate in this way?
So it started a few years ago, I think 2019. I looked it up this morning. We try to be interested in how materials can be characterized in order to study dark matter. And so this is a subject I was never really involved in. And so because it applies some of my skills in characterizing materials, I got interested. And so we have worked on this project for a few years.
In terms of seeking the grant?
Well, we got an internal grant first from UNF. I think that was in 2019. And that started this project. And we had a couple of master students from the material science and engineering degree at UNF that worked on this project, which eventually led to this grant. But it uses a lot of the techniques I've been using in my life as a scientist to characterize structures.
Well, Dr. Greg Wurtz, Dr. Chris Kelso, thanks so much. Congratulations on the grant.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, up next, a new musical celebrates the life of the so-called Queen of Disco.
Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. When people are hurt through no fault of their own, finding the who, what, when, where, why, and how that led to the accident is critical to proving the truth.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
Jax PBS presents Shelter Me, stories about animals and the people who love them. Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Sponsored in part by the Jacksonville Humane Society, Subaru of Jacksonville, and Terrace Wealth Management of Raymond James and Associates, Inc. Member New York Stock Exchange, SIPC.
On the next Fresh Air, Marine Corps veteran Bailey Williams. Her new book describes her experiences as a woman in the military and the pressure she felt to prove her strength and push her body to extremes. Running for hours a day, starving herself, binging, and purging. Her book is Hollow, a memoir of my body in the Marines. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
Who are America's new oligarchs? They're pouring billions of dollars into politics. They have the ear of the president-elect. They also have control over the endless stream of your data flowing into the world every day. And now that confluence of tech, money, and politics is making Silicon Valley tech titans the most powerful people in America. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have outlined their plans to slash the federal workforce with the help of a team of, quote, small government crusaders. I'm Jen White. For the next installment of our weekly politics series, If You Can Keep It, what's in store for federal workers and how they're planning for upheaval. That's next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
And we're back. From the church choir to the dance floor, Donna Summer infused disco with a gospel sound and owned FM radio in the late 70s. Here to tell us about a musical celebrating her life and legacy is Phaedra Delanois, the show's production assistant. Good morning, Phaedra. Shannon Johnson, the actor playing Diva Donna. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning to you.
And Kristen Kennebrew, the actor playing Disco Donna. Good morning, Kristen.
Good morning.
So this musical is a genre known as the jukebox musical, which is basically, songs that exist in the real world translated to the stage. And I'm wondering if that gives you, Phaedra, sort of an extra pressure to be faithful to the sound and the artist.
It absolutely does, but it's a challenge that thankfully I get to rise to with an amazing cast. It's the music. You get this infusement of positivity and enjoyment from the cast already, or excuse me, from the audience already, because they're familiar with the music. So they're dancing and singing along, and it just is that extra jolt of positivity that just pushes us forward.
Yeah, because they're coming as fans. Some of them passionate fans, I'm certain. But this is a show where there's actually 3 Donnas. And so, Shannon, you play the Diva Donna.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what that particular aspect of her character is like and where it takes place in the musical.
So I am actually reenacting her life as, as the star diva, Donna in the show. And so I'm
And she's kind of the original diva, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I'm telling her story, and I hope I do it well. I'm telling her story from her point of view, coming in as a young girl, and then turning into diva Donna herself, and then becoming, the singer that we know and love, Miss Donna Summer.
Yeah, okay. And so, Kristen, you played Disco Donna.
Yes.
Explain what that role is like. How is it different from the diva role?
It's different in the sense that we have Diva narrating the story, so Disco is kind of like in the moment, and you're seeing everything happen from her point of view at that time.
Okay. Are you both singing songs?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And do you sing them individually?
We have some songs that we actually sing together,
Mhm.
but we have a lot of numbers that we do alone.
So, I mean, you're both very young. Did you know Donna Summer coming into this, or was this like an education for you?
A lot of it was education. Some of the songs I actually knew. Of course, you hear a lot of on the
Yeah.
radio. That's one of the songs I kind of grew up listening to. But yeah, a lot of education, a lot of research I got to
Okay.
do.
I agree. Same for me. Like I knew who Donna Summer was, and I knew of the music. And then when I started to do more research, I'm like, oh, this song and this song and that song. Like she works
Yeah.
hard for the money and hot stuff, bad girls. I was like, yes, yes, yes. But
Yeah,
started to
those
learn
were
more.
some of her huge hits. I mean, you mentioned Hot Stuff Bad Girls. I guess in 1979 feature, she became the first female to have 2 hits in the Billboard Top 3 at the same time. I mean, she really was this enormous star at the time. She was, I think, only rivaled by the Beatles in terms of having 3 consecutive #1 albums. She was the first solo artist to do it. I mean, she was huge.
I mean, she was a force in music and still informs how a lot of artists and music is informed to this very day. And that's what's so encouraging about getting to participate in this kind of show. Um, Influential women that have shaped culture through something that they're passionate about and that they love. And Donna Summer was a living embodiment of that, of how music and culture really come together and make something spectacular.
Um, she had a complicated life. I mean, she wasn't just, a singer and an enormous success, especially in the disco era, late
Mhm.
70s, early 80s. She, had a suicide attempt after a huge hit of hers. I mean, she was a very successful, musical artist, but was having some struggles in her personal life. So is how much of that is a part of the script of this musical?
It's such an important part of telling the story of Donna Summer is a lot of the adversity that she faced in her life informed so much of what she did moving forward. And so Coleman Domingo, who wrote the show, made sure that we didn't just center on all the glitz and the glamour, that it was counterbalanced by what made her crave that stardom in the first place.
Mm. And her roots were in like a gospel choir. I mean, she really started in the church, and took that sound and transformed it into what was then really a new musical form that, she helped define. So how do you kind of tell that part of her story, that musical evolution?
So they do go in depth. They talk about, how she grew up in the church and, that's where she really kind of found her voice, where she kind of found her footing is, oh, I can actually do this. I can sing. I have a voice, even though I'm not the first that I would think to be picked, I still have a voice. And we tell that story. We talk about her, in her younger years when she, first started singing and how she kind of developed that sound from there.
And Kristen, what does the Disco Donna kind of present as on stage? That must be very fun, I would think.
Oh, yes. She is very much like myself. I was like, okay, I relate to Donna some because she's very bubbly, goofy, and quirky.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, I resonate with that a lot.
And this is an ensemble production, of course. It is at Players by the Sea. It is runs through December 22nd, and there are Friday and Saturday night shows at 8. There's Sunday shows at 2, and you can get tickets at playersbythesea.org.
Yeah.
Playersbythesea.org. Yep.
All
Yep.
right.
December 6th through December 22nd. Yes.
All right. Well, Phaedra Delanois, Shannon Johnson, Kristen Kennebrew, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so
having us.
much.
Thank you.
All right. And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have some suggestions or feedback, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. Join us tomorrow when we discuss harrowing conditions at a local immigration detention center. I'm Ann Schindler, and you've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Museum Shop. More at cummermuseum.org. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
More than a century ago, a company called Calum helped Jacksonville become the winter film capital of the world, a reputation that lasted only a decade. Hear the fascinating true story on Bygone Jacks, Our Unsung History, a podcast from WJCT Public Media.